I'd like to alert you to one of the networks here. We've got a network over on the left-hand side, and we have enabled EIGRP on that network. Why have we enabled EIGRP on the network? Well, first, let's view how we did it. We used the network command to turn the routing protocol on. But why did we turn the routing protocol on for Fast Ethernet 0/0? Well, we turned it on so that we could advertise that network into the autonomous system. So that's important. But the problem is the network command is multifaceted. It also says we will listen to hellos and speak hellos out of the interface. Now look at this interface and the topology. Do we want to run EIGRP in terms of open it up and expose it to peering? No, we don't want a peer off of this port. Why? Because this looks like an end user port. This is the perimeter of our autonomous system where VLANs could live, end user VLANs. We don't want to expose ourselves to rogue neighborships, whether that's malicious or unintentional. So what we can do is we can use the passive interface command to say, although we are running EIGRP on this interface, I want you to be passive. And what that really means is we will not listen to or speak hellos out that interface. Now, understand this. There's a few different forms of the syntax. What we can do is we can say passive interface and then specify the interface to be very clear about maybe a few interfaces. Or we could say, by default, all of my interfaces will be passive. And then I override it as needed when I do need to form neighborships out those ports. This is a really critical tuning feature. It makes EIGRP more secure. It also makes it more efficient because we aren't doing things like sending and receiving hellos unnecessarily. So if we were to do this in our environment, I could come over to my topology, and where might I find need of using the passive interface command? Would I use passive interface on R3 and R4? Not so much, because they don't have a lot of end user interfaces. But R1 does, and R2 does, so let's try both forms of the syntax. So first, do I have any passive interface configured right now? And I don't. It would show up in show IP protocols. So we'll go in here, we do this under EIGRP mode, and we could say passive interface default. Now, I need to override that on gig 2/0. So I'll say no passive interface, gig 2/0, and then I will reform the neighborship so you can see very clearly we have broken neighborships because no longer will I be neighboring between R1 and R2 across their common LAN, which looks fine to me. So we'll go over to R2, and I'll use the other form of the syntax. In the real world, I would keep it consistent, but I would say passive interface, gig 1, and we'll just keep on doing that. 2, 48. Then I'll verify. Do a show IP protocols to make sure that I can see them in this output, and I can. So the passive interfaces will show up there. They will also show up in the running config. So you have two good places to go for verification of the passive interfaces. So make your network more secure and more efficient by using the passive interface on those key places where you do not want and you do not expect neighborships to be formed. If we want to validate that we have the passive interface command properly utilized, show IP protocols is the easiest place to go. And here I can see passive interface has been set up on Fast Ethernet 0/0, and we can also see that we have a host there. We have a host on that LAN. So yeah, if that's all we would expect, or a collection of hosts, a collection of servers, using the passive interface option is a good one for us.